Nikita Koloff here. Hey, you're listening to InYourHeadOnline.com. Did you understand my English? InYourHeadOnline.com. You gotta tune in every time we're on, or I'll come looking for you and hit you with a Russian sickle.
All right, we are back, and we're joined by the returning Magnum T.A. Ties a record here for three appearances here on In Your Head. Welcome back.
Well, thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always good to have you back on. If you want to call in tonight, the number is 508-644-8503. We just had Nikita on, and he wants you to watch your back because he said he might, he might pull out the Russian sickle.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
My sweet little Nikita would threaten me. I can't believe that.
But everybody, that's going to be the second annual Magnum T.A. Clash for the Cup. That's this Saturday, and you go to ProWrestlingMidAtlantic.com to get your ticket information, or you can email Keith Crockett at ProWrestlingMidAtlantic.com for VIP and Platinum ticket information. Were you happy with how the first one went?
Yeah, I really was. It was, of course, it wasn't a huge event in terms of numbers, but the people that were there were, very sincere, and the things that they did for me were very surprising. They had, a really neat little montage of a bunch of my old matches going, and Bob Cottle was there and had some kind words to say, and it was just nice. It was nice to be remembered, and especially right there in the city that I grew up.
Mm-hmm. How's Bob Cottle doing? I know he wasn't doing too well last year.
Well, I haven't heard any reports of him having any other incidents. I know back when we had right before we had the Fan Fest here in Charlotte, he'd had a little bout where he had to be hospitalized. But as far as I know, he's still kicking, and he's a strong man. So I hope he's around quite a few more years.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of this year in Charlotte, the Fan Fest? They had they had a dinner and they gave out some special awards. Did you think that was a nice ceremony?
Well, I think all the things that they're doing now, we're trying to bring a little bit more class to the deal. I mean, it's nice to be remembered. It's nice to be when people are getting respected and recognized by their peers as well. Because myself, I've been out of the game in the ring for over 20 years, and it's not something that's a part of my day-to-day life. So when I get around something like that, it kind of brings back a flood of old memories, and for people to still have the acknowledgement of what we did and performance-wise all those years ago, it's still pretty special.
Mm-hmm. Last year it was I think it was a tag team tournament at the first annual Magnum T.A. Clash for the Cup. This year I believe it's a singles tournament. Actually,
it was singles last year.
Oh, it was. Well,
yes.
We'll have to edit that so I sound smart.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't think I killed that many brain cells between now and then, but it was. But I remember the fellow that won the final match, and it was a one-on-one match because he climbed up on top of the ladder and took a pretty good big spill off of it. I do believe it's a singles award.
Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds correct. I know this year it's definitely singles. And, again, you can go to ProWrestlingMidAtlantic.com for some more information on there. Now, when you were starting out wrestling, did you ever think, someday you would be considered a legend?
No, that was the last thing in my mind. I mean, I had, when I had that car accident, I was only 27 years old, and I certainly hadn't looked far enough down that road to, figure out, where I would be in the history of wrestling, and, figured I had at least another 10 years left in me, back in those days. But I'm glad that although my career was cut short, that it did leave a mark and something people still talk about fondly today. And I got a chance to work with some of the greats of the greats in the business. So, there's things about it that sometimes I have a lot of regrets and wish I could have done more, but there's a lot more positives about the things I did get to experience and the great talent I got to share that ring with. That it's easier to hold on to that than all the what should have beens and could have beens and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. One of the last appearances we had with you on the show, you talked about, like, when you did commentary, you don't think you were really ready for it because you really still wanted to be in the ring.
Exactly.
Do you think, like, would it be something you'd want to do now?
Well, since I've talked with you guys last, I've had the opportunity to do a little show with the WWE. They had me out on the Legend show, and which came from Houston, Texas, and that would be one of the few things I probably could do as far as doing some color commentating work or something like that. The rest of the work that goes on behind the scenes is so physically demanding on those guys, running here and there and yonder and on their feet, having 14, 15, 16-hour days. My hat's off to them, because everybody that's a part of that show and putting it together is going nonstop from the time they hit the building till the time the show's over. And I very much like being around it and seeing it, and there's so many of my old counterparts that work behind the scenes now. I felt very much at home, in that environment. But as far as what I could realistically do and be a part of, what's going on today, doing some commentating or some special color work would probably be, physically, all I can handle.
We get a caller here on the line. LTNA fan is calling in from Portugal.
Indeed, I am.
You have a question?
Hello. I have two questions, actually, for Mr. Magnum T.A. First of all, we all know that you unfortunately had to retire due to the car accident. But before that, were you already feeling the bumps and bruises that are inherent through the pro wrestling career? Or were you already thinking, I'm getting some injuries here and there, I might need to retire in a couple of years? Or did you feel physically well?
No, I felt great. I felt great. I mean, I was 27. I was in the best shape I'd ever been in my life. I really had my sights zeroed in on the world's heavyweight title and getting a run with that title. And I was looking for some real serious things to come. And no, it really hadn't taken a toll on me physically yet, because I was still too young and felt like I had that big S tattooed on my chest and I could do anything. So to answer your question, no, I wasn't considering retiring at 27 or looking at that end of it, but I did want to, first get a run with the world title before I even thought about something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What was your second question?
My second question is more of a funny question that I always wanted to ask. Obviously, your name is Magnum T.A. Magnum T.A.'s take on the Magnum T.A. character. I don't know if you know who Don Fry is, which is an MMA fighter. From you and Don Fry, which one of you do you think it's more does look more like the Magnum T.A. character?
I don't know who you're referring to, so you kind of.
Now this question failed.
I never thought I looked like Tom Selleck anyway. That was Andre the Giant who came up with that. And I think he might have been drinking at the time, so his vision might have been a little blurred. But it was a good idea, and it's something that stuck, and it gave me a name, a handle that people certainly remembered. And that's all I was really looking to accomplish. I did bump into Tom Selleck one time in New York City, though. It was kind of funny. We bumped into each other face to face in the polo store, and it was very weird. I mean, he's a big tall guy. He isn't like bulky or nothing, but he's really tall. And I thought to myself, I'm not even going to say anything, because if I started to tell him this story, it's just not going to come out right. I'm going to sound like a mark right up to the line.
Yeah, this was a question that I always wanted to ask, but unfortunately, you don't know who Don Fry is, so. This question failed miserably, and I apologize.
All right. Well, thanks for trying anyway, LTNA.
Yeah. Oh, we have to try.
Thanks for calling, man.
Thank you. Bye.
I actually heard in an interview recently that it was like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and they mentioned that Scott Hall had some heat with you. Was that over, like, him using the Magnum Scott Hall name, or was it just something else?
No, he didn't have any heat with me. He had some heat with the office in Charlotte, because we were all kind of back in those days, separate territories, but he was up there with Bob Daigle and that group, and we're all part of the NWA, and they just thought it was very uncool for for them to, try to make their own Magnum character when, they were pushing me the way they were doing what they were doing. They just thought that didn't show, enough creativity on their part to just kind of ride on the coattails of something that we were already off and running with. So, no, Scott never had any heat with me personally. Back at that time, he wasn't even a main eventer in the game, and he certainly went on to have a tremendous career. But he never had any heat with me. I like him. I'm proud of the performer that he turned into, and I'm just sorry he had to fight so many personal demons that took him out of the game sooner than he should have been.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a question from the message board, Inter?
Yeah, actually, Extreme Falls, he has a question. He wants to know what are his thoughts on Ric Flair's retirement? He's going to retire sometime this year.
What are my thoughts? Well, my thoughts are my hat's off to him, first of all. Anybody that can have been in the game as many years as he has, and all the thousands of matches and bumps and bruises and lacerations later, still even be able to go out there and perform. He's one heck of a guy, and he'll go down in the annals of history as one of the best of all time, without a doubt. But I hope that when he gets out, he can find some graceful transition, some way to be, still part of the business if he wants to be, and enjoy retirement, because I know it's been a very difficult thought process for him, not being the nature boy as he's always been out in the middle of the spotlight and being the main event. And, like I said, I just hope he finds a graceful transition, because his time, and it's probably been time for a while, but I just don't want to see anything bad happen to him in the ring. I like to remember Rick for the being the nature boy and everything that he was, and the 60-minute man, and one of the greatest performers of all time, rather than somebody that tried to have just one too many last matches and hurts himself for the rest of his life.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about doing some commentary for WWE Legends thing. Are they ever going to put out an action figure, Magnum T.A, or a DVD or anything like that?
I'm not the guy to ask. I would certainly be open to that. I've never been approached, by anyone, to do something like that. I've had some dialogue with John Laurinaitis trying to, after I did this show for him out in Houston, back and forth, just trying to find a spot to, try to find something that I could be a benefit and an asset to the company. And, thus far that hasn't produced anything. It's not to say that might not produce something in the future, but they've got, with the tragedy with Chris Benoit that happened this summer, those guys have really had their hands full trying to, shuffle through all the scrutiny they've been through with their drug testing program, and having to suspend guys and rewrite storylines to accommodate all that. They've had a pretty tough pill to swallow trying to, just weather that storm. So I think the door of possibility, is always open, certainly on my part, and I enjoyed being around those guys. And first time I ever met Vince McMahon, believe it or not, after all these years, he and I had never seen each other eyeball to eyeball before Houston. So anyway, you never say never. You don't know what the future is going to hold. And, I just, try to keep myself open to whatever opportunity might present itself.
Did he ever try to bring it to WWF? I guess you said you never met him, but did they ever send you when you were main eventing in the NWA? Did they ever try to bring you into the WWE?
No, and I was in 1986. We were very much on the. Well, let me back up a little bit. The whole reason I became the Magnum T.A character was because of Andre the Giant. Mm-hmm. Andre was going up. This was when Vince Sr. was still alive. And Andre and I were in Florida together. Andre was supposed was going to go up, was getting ready to go back to New York, and was going to talk to Vince Sr. about bringing me in there. Well, before that ever happened, before that ever transpired or even had an opportunity of happening, Ernie Ladd was the booker for Bill Watts, and Ernie was coming in doing guest shots in Florida. And when he saw me and he heard kind of the scuttlebutt of what was going on and the idea of this new character and all this stuff, they're the ones that jumped and pulled me into Mid-South before anybody else even had a chance to do anything. So I never had a discussion with New York, and that's probably the time that it would have happened. But, coincidentally enough, I got pulled into Mid-South. And, frankly, I'm glad that I did, because Mid-South ended up being a tremendous proving grounds for me, because it was the first time I got chances to work in main events, work main event angles with people like Ted DiBiase and Mr. Wrestling and Kamala and the Missing Link and, just a host of people. And it was that year and a half that I was there that really prepared me to come to the NWA when we set the world on fire and took off on TBS.
You mentioned, working for Mid-South and going to NWA. Back then there were all the territories. How many years do you think it took you in the wrestling business before you consider yourself really good?
Well, it's funny. When I broke in, the mentality was, listening to the old timers and guys that had been around. I mean, you couldn't even consider yourself remotely a worker until you'd been in the business at least 5 years. Mm-hmm. And back then, if you'd been in the business 5 years, you were wrestling at least 6 days a week. So, the average guy would have had, 15 to 1,800 matches before they ever even got a break. And that was the thought processing back then. Nikita Koloff is probably one of the few stories that I know of outside of maybe the Road Warriors of people that got burst on the scene and got pushed to the max and got made into superstars basically overnight almost, and really didn't have hadn't learned the ropes, hadn't been up and down the road enough to know all the ins and outs of the business. And it made, of course, some very trying times for those guys, trying to be true main eventers and carry the weight and everything's expected of you in being in that position, because they just don't know how, or they didn't know how. That just being thrown out there in a dogfight without ever having the practical experience to know how to take care of themselves.
When we were at the Fan Fest and we talked to some of the bigger indie talent like Bryan Danielson, and he actually talked about now when he got into wrestling, his first year he basically wrestled other guys that just came out of wrestling school, and he kind of compared it to like your era, because Tully Blanchard was there, and those guys when they started they would wrestle the veterans to get better. Do you think that it would be a lot harder, if you back in your day, when you were starting out and you were just wrestling guys that were on your level, you think it would have been harder to improve?
Well, yeah, and no matchmaker or booker would ever want to put that together, because that would be a crummy match. I mean, to put two green guys out there, that don't. I mean, I work. Believe me, I've been in a few of those, and they weren't pretty. The Barbarian and I broke in at the same time in Portland, Oregon, and Doc Savage was the booker, and he and I out there in an opening match that we beat each other to death, and I think about killed 2 or 3 people in the first few rows of seats. And what we did, but it wasn't pretty. And somebody's got to be able to general the match and have some clue what's going on. So I can't imagine people wanting to pay hard-earned money to watch people that don't have a clue what both people not having a clue what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, Flair could go lead a broomstick. He could go out there with somebody that knew very, very little and have a very entertaining match with him. Maybe not the kind of match he could have had with Ricky Steamboat, but nonetheless, he'd have a match that would lead to people talking about something on the way home about, wow, did you see that? Did you see this? My thing was, and what I developed in my thought processing, and very much as a result of what you talk about Tully Blanchard, was that I came from amateur background of wrestling, and I grew up watching pro wrestling with some bit of disdain at some points in time, because I thought the amateur wrestling was just so much more respected and all this, that, and the other, and hadn't been in the game yet, so I really didn't know everything that was involved. But when I had a match with someone, I tried to make it such a believable contest and a struggle for there to be a true winner and a loser, and paint the picture of who was the rule breaker and who was the one trying to play by the rules. That was my challenge every night. I wanted to paint a picture so the people understand who the good guy and the bad guy was, and why the bad guy had to cheat to get the advantage, and why the good guy could be taken to such a level of frustration that he'd lose all of his composure, and he'd become, a wild man himself, and do that with enough physicality that they walked away and said, well, you know what? I don't know about everything I saw on the card that night, but Magnum and Tully were trying to kill each other, and that was what I tried to pull off.
Now, when you say something like that, what do you think of recently? They said that Vince Russo, who books in TNA, has said that baby faces and heels are passé. Do you think that's
well? They are to an extent, because and it's not they're passé in the extent. If it was like it was years ago, there would be somebody like John Wayne still making westerns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, if people wanted to see the good guys in the white hats and the bad guys, the dastardly villains, and they wanted to see it be just like that, then that's what we'd be giving them. But I agree with them. It is passé. Today, you have to be, they're individuals. It's more, and Vince McMahon, I've read the same thing him saying the same thing, and I understand why. It's not, there's people that are going to be favorites to different people because of their qualities. But when it comes down to it, it's no different than going into a football stadium and watching two opposing teams come out there, and there's somebody cheering for either side just as hard as they can go, and that's what it's the competition itself and the personalities that different people cling to. It's gone so much farther that way in what he's saying that there's really there's such areas of gray that if somebody were to come out today and just be a straight baby face or just a straight heel, they'd stand out. And I think Edge is very much like that in the WWE. He doesn't appear to have any inkling of wanting to do anything but make those people hate him, and he does it great. But some of the other heels historically, I'm not going to name names because I can't think of one off the top of my head, but they seem to kind of like the fans cheering for them as they're beating up on the baby face or whatnot. And it's a mentality that you've got to be able to carry through in everything you do out there, in your interviews and your match and everything. You've got to carry that off. Mm-hmm. And it's so almost like Vince was saying, people don't want to just come in and see the good guys against the bad guys anymore. Yeah, they've got D-Generation X against McMahon, who's the consummate heel. So I guess it does work to a degree, but they're almost an anti-social babyface because they're flipping people off and making lewd gestures and doing all these other things along while they're kicking the mess out of whoever Vince is sending down there to try to take them out. And that gives people something to cheer for. It's kind of a reflection on society and the type of kind of darker characters that people can kind of draw to. Like, for instance, look at all the Batman movies they made for years with people like Michael Keaton and these different guys, and then all of a sudden they came out and they made Batman Begins and made him a darker character, showed his darker side, and made him a real moody, different type character, and it's like the most successful movie they've ever made, because that's what people want today. They want people that they can see that dark side, and they can find something of themselves in them, and then they're still living their lives vicariously through those characters, just like people have since the beginning of wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, I kind of think it's more that what makes a baby face or heels kind of change, but there still needs to be somebody that you want the fans to be for and people you want the fans to be against. Kind of like if you watch The Sopranos, it's kind of like Tony Soprano is the guy that you're supposed to be interested in, even though he's a killer and a crime lord.
Yeah, and you're right, and I like that personally. But then you go see like a movie with Russell Crowe, that 310 to Yuma, and he's just this dastardly guy throughout the whole thing, but he ends up being the guy people kind of cheering for in the movie, even though he's done all this horrible stuff to people. So it's weird. It's like people want to want to hang on to something that's dangerous, yet they want them to have some redeeming moral value that they suddenly, shines through in the end and they do something good.
Right. Did you kind of see, like, the fans starting to change, like, even when you were wrestling? Because you were kind of an edgy guy, and people were kind of getting away from, like, cheering for, like, the real goody-goody guys.
Well, and I never tried to be one of those mamsy-pamsy baby faces. I mean, the vignettes and stuff they had me do with my mom, was something that was Dusty's brainchild. That was just something he was trying to do. But if you notice the things that people remember the most about the program with Tully Blanchard, because it became such a brutal beating type just thing, and also the matches I had with Nikita. I mean, the brutality that was going on was like a modern day Gladiators, and what we brought the thing to, and there wasn't anything real pretty and babyface and cutesy about any of it. It was just going into war. And they had me in the angle where I smacked Bob Geisel and knocked him out or something on an interview, and I got a little taste of being able to be the character that Steve Austin got to play out in full.
Yeah.
With because that's where I was going. That was I was always supposed to be kind of a lone wolf character, and though I was associated with Dusty and throw me in these matches with the 6-man with the Rock and Roll Express or something, I have a feeling that if I'd had a chance to completely evolve in the character that I was getting very comfortable with, it would have ended up very much along the same lines of what Austin got to do up there in the WWE.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked about obviously your feuds with Nikita and Tully really intense, and then you did like a feud with Jimmy Garvin, which is kind of a different character.
Well, that was a fluff puff little deal. That was that was something to do in between. Hopefully gearing up to have another run with Flair for the title.
Mm-hmm.
And because they had to put Jimmy with somebody like me because they wanted Jimmy to be a heel, but Jimmy was had such a cutesy little way about doing things, and he's one of those heels that you would love to hate. I mean, he was very entertaining and very, he wasn't like big and intimidating. I mean, he was in good shape and everything. But he wasn't a great big guy, and he could work, incredibly. But that was an angle that wasn't really going anywhere. That was kind of the transition for me, going on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. We got a caller here. We got Ryron on the line.
Hey there, Magnum T.A. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you tonight.
No, my pleasure.
What was Mr. Wrestling 2 like as an opponent?
Well, he ended up being a great opponent, but it didn't start out that way. When they first turned him heel, he didn't have a clue. He'd never been a heel in his life, and he had always been, he'd always been Mr. Wrestling. He always been able to out-wrestle his opponents and do all these little, neat little moves to get himself out of predicaments and all this stuff. And it was a real psychological twist for him to put himself in a heel mentality, to be able to back down or cower down from someone or do those kind of things, because it just wasn't inbred in his head from, the way he worked all his life. And the office, Bill was really frustrated with him in the beginning of the program and was getting ready to shut the whole thing down, and pretty much did. But on the tail end of it, he got it. Something clicked in his head, and he was an incredible heel. I mean, he always had the heel interview. That wasn't the problem. The problem was learning when to backpedal and when to cheat, when to do this, when to do that. And once that click turned in his head, boy, he was a dream to work with, because he's a great worker. It was just a struggle initially because he was just so used to, just being able to go out there and do his thing and wrestle his way out of holes and do things that, that's not what a heel did in that time frame. I mean, I remember him and I having some very rugged confrontations in the beginning of that program. But it all worked out good, and I got a lot of respect for Johnny. He's just a tremendous worker, and it was it was something I remember fondly in my career.
You have anything else, Ryron?
Yeah, I was curious if you've been following your godson Cody Rhodes on Monday Night Raw, and if so, what you think of his progress so far.
Oh, he is incredible. Cody is a natural. I mean, he was just an incredible amateur wrestler in high school. But he's taken right to this like it's second nature, and I just hope he has a long injury-free career and keeps his head screwed on straight and doesn't go down any of those dark paths that many of the other boys have found their way getting lost.
Do you think the reason for that, because obviously there's been a lot of tragedy in wrestling, and do you think the reason for that is because a lot of the guys are young and there's a lot of money and a lot of female fans and there's all that stuff?
It's really, I can't tell you why, but I can tell you these guys don't have near the schedule we had back in the day. I mean, we used to wrestle 330, 340 days a year and more, back in the 80s. And today their schedule is about 180 some matches, events a year. But the life on the road is just a lonely life, and it brings on just a lot of things to attempt or to try to do something about try to mask the pain for lack of a better word. Of just being out there and being by yourself, the things you do for entertainment or to find companionship or whatever, usually aren't real productive because something that seems like it's a good idea at the time when you've been on the road for 30 days isn't real conducive to a happy home life at home. And I think it's really hard on the guys, especially ones with families, going out and being gone. Sometimes 4, 5, and 6 weeks at a time, and then coming home and trying to be daddy or be a husband and switch gears is almost impossible. And I've heard a lot of the different suggestions people have made after the Benoit tragedy, saying, we should have a season and we should have this and have that. But fact of the matter is, it's got it easier today than it's ever been. The buildings are nicer, the food's catered there for them, it's very organized in the bags. They have a chance to go out and lay their matches out. They have every opportunity in the world to give a great product, and they get treated like professional athletes. And 20 years ago, if you went somewhere and they had a bucket of chicken, that might have been I might consider it a buffet, but they're getting treated as a whole much better than we could have ever imagined to have been treated, and and I'm sorry to see the choices a lot of folks have made, but I have a hard time understanding it to some degree because in today's time, these guys make more money than I ever imagined making, and they have an opportunity to invest in their future, to secure the future for not only themselves but their families and their grandkids, and as Flair is living proof of, you can easily work in the business if you stay in shape and looking good into your early 40s at the very least. So, it's a tough world out there for people in the working class in general, and I think those guys need to kind of wake up and smell the coffee and realize that if they're having the opportunity to work for, the really one and only profitable wrestling organization in the world, that they really need to take that opportunity seriously and treat it with respect and treat the career accordingly, or there's going to be somebody step in and take their place.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to thank you for coming on tonight. I know you got another interview here coming up. Anything you want to tell everybody out there why they should come and see you? The second annual Magnum T.A. Clash for the Cup, and that's at ProWrestlingMidAtlantic.com. That's in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Well, it's always a pleasure to see the fans and reminisce and try to give a little something back for the people that supported us all over the years. And the wrestling fans are the greatest fans on earth as far as I'm concerned. And anytime I get an opportunity to sit down and talk about the old days with them and put a smile on everybody's face, I look forward to it.
Excellent. Well, really, thank you for coming on tonight.
All right, well, thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate it. You've tied Larry Zbyszko, so it's another accolade to add to your career.
Well, I'm going to write that down. Thank you for telling me that.
InYourHeadOnline.com. That's the place where the horsemen hang out with only the best. 1-inch biceps, Barbie, and Jack. They've got the answers. They've got the interviews. This is the place to be for wrestling news.